first session will be on Bhagavat, Sankhya and the modern scientific worldview by Professor Laxmidhar Behera. Without much delay, I want to welcome Professor Behera.
Okay, thank you, Rishi Prabhu, and all the audience here. I thank Praveen to put me on the top and asking me to do justice to the summit. I don't know how well I can do. Let me share my PPT first, and then I will take you through the journey of what I want to share with you. Okay, so are you able to see my slide? Are you able to see? Yeah, thank you. So, okay, so dear participants, I heartily welcome to our this Vedantic Theology Summit. What it can contribute to the scientific temper, and I would start the discussion right away. So let us see the first question. Jigyasa means inquisitiveness. We ask questions. We are encouraged to ask questions. A person who is fearless can only ask questions. So our worldview changes based on our bias. We have different worldview, right? And these biases are contributed by our culture, belief system, values. That is why our Vedanta says that scientific exploration, search for truth, must commence from the position of neutrality. And Bhagavad Gita talks about the same neutrality when Lord Krishna advises Arjuna to control his senses like a kurma or a tortoise withdraws its limb. Similarly, we must withdraw our senses from the sense objects to remain always neutral. Same thing also coined by our great founder of Gaudiya Vaishnava Vedanta, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who said that this process of dissemination of knowledge would be lost unless we operate from the platform of neutrality. In an incident where Damodar Pandit started making some point during his stay in Jagannath Puri. So basically, our teachers, they have taught us how to make a worldview. What is worldview? We all live in our own worldview. Even an ant has its own worldview. So if you look at, we have varieties of habitats, and most of the time, our worldview is based on our four basic propensity, which in our Vedantic connotation is talked up on terms of ahara, bhaya, nidra, maithuna, eating, sleeping, matting, and defending. So these are the basis by which we create a world around us, right? So let me tell you, what is a world? World is not something, according to Vedanta, world is not something that is outside. World is something that I experience. So experiential world, what kind of experience I have? Same object can instantiate different experience in different individuals. So this is a very deep topic to be able to comprehend. And you see that change of worldview. The worldview would change only when we become inquisitive and ask questions. And that is why it says, Athatho Brahma Jigyasa. We must ask questions. In human form of life, we must ask questions. And as we get answer to our questions, our worldview certainly changes. That which sometimes appeared to be very wonderful for us becomes distasteful because you have got something much higher, right? So param društva nivartate. You get a higher test in a certain worldview, then you accept that worldview and reject the worldview of lower test. So this is our tradition. The questioning process brings out different creative nature of an individual, such as philosophical, artistic, and scientific nature. Unfortunately, this questioning process has been stopped, I don't know why, within our curriculum and syllabus. We give a routine syllabus to our children, and we don't make them ask questions that really can bring out their own creative potential. So this is something that we have to be very careful. For example, within the modern science, the worldview is based on the axiom that everything is based on the primacy of the energy. Energy is the most fundamental. Okay, that is, neither energy can be created nor it can be destroyed. And this energy, the point here is that what the scientists are trying to do, they want to see uh, the the original source of this, or original form of this energy, and and that energy, how it gets transformed to different shape and color and size, and uh, and then the variegated manifestations that we have within this universe, how that comes from that primordial energy. But the problem here is the energy that science talks about is an inert energy. It is syntactic, even that energy has no semantics. This paradigm has caused biggest stumbling block in explaining human cognition or psychic nature. And I think this is one of the biggest stumbling block within science. And we really want to take the science to the next level, then here is an opportunity to borrow from Vedantic theology. And I can give assurance that the scientific community will get a lot of insight from Vedantic theology. So the quest is, what is that original form of energy that gives rise to all other variegated forms of energy, right? The modern science says it is quantum field, but if you look at our Vedanta, we talk about not only one category of energy. Uh, the information comes from Vedanta, Gaudiya Vaishnava Vedanta is there are three categories of energy: divine energy, material energy, and marginal energy. So I'm going to speak about this in little depth later. So the common subject matter for such a summit is our quest for the subtlest form of matter is common in both the Vedantic worldview and the modern scientific view. That even within science, we see that why science has become powerful to understand the gross matter. They have taken the help of the subtle nature of the matter. So, so obviously, the ultimate form of this energy must be in the subtlest form. And what is that subtlest form? That is the question that we must ask. So we must agree to an ontological form and structure of matter at some point of time, whether we follow the path of Vedanta theology or the empiric science, ultimately truth cannot vary in its ultimate form. So one of the questions that has been addressed within science, what are the fundamental building block of the nature, right? And this subject matter, as far as historical record is concerned, must be at least 2,500 years old, or even more. Of course, in Vedanta, the questioning process is existing from time eternity. That's a different subject matter. But let's see how we, for example, when we started learning within our science in our school days, it's all boiled down to periodic table. That means it was said that if we have this 120 odd elements, then possibly we can build anything, whatever we like. Certainly that has not happened. And more importantly, these periodic table elements like hydrogen, helium, all these elements, are they fundamental truth underlying our experiential universe? So when we talk about building basic building block of universe, that means we are looking at certain truth, uh, axiomatic truth, which kind of makes the foundation of the manifested universe. So, and in a very famous talk by Professor David Tang, he emphatically said that we really taught our children white lies in the beginning of 20th century when we presented them that periodic table is all that matters, right? And so then what is a periodic table was not the basic building block of the universe, then what then, right? So all of you know that in science, we started with Thomson's, J.J. Thomson's experiment, which invented electron. And then of course, this electron was known almost at the end of 1800, the 18th century or 19th century beginning. So you knew this. So, but and then that was further developed by Bohr and others, and then we talked about electron, nucleus, electron, nucleus again further divided into proton and neutron. And then by the end of 1970s, it was found that proton and neutron are not fundamental. Inside proton and neutron, there are smaller particles called quarks. Okay, so the fundamental truth shifted from periodic table to one electron and two quarks. Okay, so this is how 70s or 80s. Because I studied my +2 or intermediate science in 80s, and that's where we were, one electron, two quarks. Is the science still same? So 1980 and now 2020, 30 years after, or 40 years after. No, if you look at now, things have changed, and now the people are talking about the field. But it was learned that that's not true. But the fundamental reality is much more subtle and abstract. They are fluid-like substances which are spread throughout the entire universe and ripple in strange and interesting way named field. So scientists now are finding the field are all pervading, right? And this field can take certain value at every point in space. and this value has a spatio-temporal nature. So, as we will surprisingly in Bhagavat Sankhya, um, all elemental objects were described in terms of space and time. Um, so we already know in science how Michael Faraday um, 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 talked about electric field, magnetic field, uh, but this field concept that we are talking about really became very pronounced when quantum mechanics uh, uh, was invented, right? In quantum mechanics, one of the interesting observation was that energy is not continuous, but always parcel in little discrete packets. And that's why quantum means discrete packet. And quantum field theory is a subject that combines the continuous field of Faraday with the discrete ideas of quantum mechanics. Okay, and then there are gradual development happened, and then you see the standard model to explain the original building block of the universe, standard model, and you can see there are these different fields, and the Higgs field became famous in the recent years. That was discovered in 2012 at the Large Hadron Collider, where the Higgs particle lasts for 10 to the power minus 22 seconds. This is a little bump in the data is how we know that Higgs particle existed. That's amazing that you have to really spend so much of energy, so much of time, and just to understand a very subtle information that is embedded within the nature, right? So, so if you look at the standard model, which we talk about theory of everything so far, so you can see this equation, right? This standard model, one part takes care of gravity, other is electromagnetism, strong force, weak force, matter, and Higgs boson, and all these fields. Um, so, so that's how. So the point is, the standard model is now thought to explain every single experiment that we have done on Earth. But there is extra stuff which is still mystery called dark matter, dark energy, and inflation, and the first few fraction of seconds after the Big Bang. These are not explained by this particular standard model. Now, what is happening? That means we create a model, we are able to fit this model with existing data, but then we still have some data, and these data are not fitting this equation. So what is happening? So from periodic table to one electron, two quanta, and then now the standard model, we are again taking them back and we are looking for a new one that can explain everything that we are able to observe. So, so they go for new physics beyond the standard model, search for grand unification of all these fields and forces into a single fundamental thing. So LSC has not seen anything in support of this for 2 years, but they are present. The Hadron Collider experiment that I talked about, where Higgs boson was invented. So a bigger machine is required, which costs, the scientists are estimating it will cost around $10 billion and takes 20 years to understand the subject. And I remember David Tong was telling that to do such an experiment, no government is coming forward and providing money for us to do this experiment. And he was probably jokingly mentioning that probably China can do a favor to scientists to do this study. So anyway, this is so what is the basis? Why I'm bringing all this topic? Because I wanted to let you know what science understands about the basic building block of the universe, right? So And as in the term of Tang, Professor David Tang, he said, we have been always telling or teaching our children white lies when you taught them periodic table as the basic building block or loctron and two quarks as the basic building block. Now someone would come and take the platform of David Tang and say, what David Tang was telling, that must be also white lies, because this quantum field is not uh, 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 the basic building block. We have to go beyond this. So anyway, but this is what is empiric science. More data comes, you have to revisit your ideas and you have to develop a new theory. That is how the empiric science goes or proceeds. Okay. So now, as I told you, this whole approach of understanding basic building block of the universe is simply looking at things only from the perspective of the energy, right? Energy is most fundamental, and how this energy originally existed, right? So that's what we are looking. Whether you talk about Big Bang and you go back to the singularity and you are looking at what is the shape of that energy, right? So now my point here is, although we are searching for the question on that, I'll give you an example of um, crisis that we have in understanding the cognition. And I will take some of our own work to explain this, right? Um, so, so one is very inert energy, and we are trying to understand that inert energy. But the so-called inert energy, as given in our Vedanta theology, the way it manifests to us is not in the form of inertness. So that's something that I'm going to talk. But let's go to a little cognition aspect. You see here, this is a robot. Um, um, this robot is interfaced with AI algorithms, and it has a visual perception module, intelligent, motion algorithm. So a list of items are given to this robot to pick some objects, and this robot um, uh, understands which object is where and then picks it. So what is interesting about this robot? Because we had this particular experimental setup we developed when we participated in an Amazon Robotics Challenge in Leipzig in Germany. And you see that now in whether it is Amazon warehouse or Alibaba warehouse, where they have some bonanza period, some 3 days or a weekday long, every hour they get some millions of order, and they cannot handle it using manpower, available manpower. So they employ thousands of robots. So the question here is, if I'm able to replace humans by these robots, so uh, can we say that we have really understood a human being? Human being is just another robot. So there is today Dr. Bob Cohen was talking about what is the hard problem of consciousness. So here you can see here within science we talk about weak or strong AI, and this robot that you saw is again part of weak AI. It is not strong AI. I'm going to talk about why this is weak AI. I will explain in the next few slides. Because many of you may not be aware of a lot of details of the mathematics, I will just let you know that before we make a robot to operate or to manipulate objects, the way you saw, this robot has to be mathematically described, right? And this is how we describe the motion in the end effector, motion in the joint space, how they are connected. Similarly, motion in the vision space and motion in the task space, how they are connected. And then we create a model, and then we create a control system. And let us, I'll just give you, because this is very important for all of you. I'm not going to detail, but I want to give you the spirit behind it. So you see here, this is an architecture called distributed PD controller, where the visual features upon which the robot operates, we have discretized that features, and for every discrete zone, we define a proportional and derivative, proportional gain and derivative gain, and a PD controller, and then we take a fuzzy average. And to do that, what we do, we take a Lyapunov function, and Lyapunov function like an energy function. And normally when a system operates, its energy should not grow. This energy should damp. Otherwise, the system will become unstable. This is a concept that is there in our science, right? So, so energy to decrease the rate derivative or time derivative of this function should be negative definite. So now the question is that once we come here, what is proportional gain rate of change and derivative gain rate of change? We don't know. In fact, my student came and asked me this question, and I have to use some of my intuition, and then we propose these two laws. You see, these two laws, you might think that how these laws came. These laws came because I have some familiarity with machine learning, how we normally update the weights. So based on those intuition, we came up some idea, and then my student took this and put it here and found out V dot is a negative definite, and then he hard coded these program, the gains, gain changes in the onboard computer of the robot, and then you see that how robot operates. So you see that robot is able to follow a pink ball while maintaining a distance between pink ball and the end effector of the robot. So this it is able to do simply by not here, the robot doesn't know its own kinematics or dynamics. What it knows, what it does is that it learns to do this task by simply this the programming up, this. So the point here is, you see, you might have heard about cricketers like Sachin Tendulkar or a football player like Diego Maradona. They hit the ball, they time the ball, or they trap a ball and score a goal. This requires a very dexterous manipulation of your hand or your leg. And these people, they don't know what is mathematics. They don't know what is mathematics, but they do it simply by learning. But how these things are happening within human cognition? And they're very aware when they trap a ball, they're very aware of it. Okay? It is not that somebody teaches them how to hit the ball. So there is a conscious computing that's happening within every human, and we don't know. But here, when we make a robot look like an expert human being, there again, robot doesn't do things being self-aware. We have programmed the robot. Everything that I have shown you, all these steps that I showed you, we did it. My researcher did it, or the researchers around the globe, they do it. Robots are simply hard programmed. Even after 100 years, almost a little less than around 54, 55, artificial intelligence came into existence in this new incarnation. And so if you look at in that framework, almost 50 plus 20, 70 years, still our machines are dull. They are not intelligent, right? So that means we have not learned how to naturalize our own intelligence. Can I tell a robot, or I teach the robot how to become intelligent, and robot at least becomes intelligent on its own? So that means at some point of time, robot is able to understand its own environment. Robot is able to understand the concepts like Lyapunov function, the decrescent function of this energy function, and can it, hypothesize the weight update laws? We have not done anything in that direction. So this is where I'm saying that uh, we humans do, and we have not naturalized that even in machine. So in spite of scientific progress, there is a lot of gap. Why we are failing? This question we must ask. And I just to let you know that all our machine learning algorithm, because I don't know how many of you heard about Steve Hawking's concern that there should be some kind of a regulation on AI research, because otherwise we'll build AI machines that will take over humans one day. But my point here is, whatever learning algorithm we are developing, researchers are developing, humans are developing. I have not seen a machine developing an algorithm. So until that happens, until we understand the naturalization of intelligence within ourselves, I don't think that we can probably endow a machine also with that ability. I hope you understood the way we are able to naturalize the intelligence within ourselves. If I don't understand that, neither I can make a machine to also naturalize that intelligence. So this is something. Just to give you all our machine learning algorithms, they are all syntactic way to match patterns, right? For example, here it is, face recognition or voice recognition. In all these tasks, machine learning tasks, we have to define an objective function. Machine doesn't do that. We have to collect data. Machine doesn't go and understand, here I have to collect data, there I have to collect data. No. We have to collect data. And then we have to also develop learning architecture and learning algorithm. So what machine is doing that? And still we are saying, wow, we have very wonderful machines. There is a driverless car. There is, so many applications of AI like Siri, Alexa, and so forth. But unfortunately, these things are not really self-intelligent, natural intelligent. Just to explain that in terms of let's say certain human attribute, you see, even a small kid, as it grows, it becomes self-aware. I always give this example of my observation of my little daughter. When she started crawling, uh, we were in a house where there was a staircase that we used for going to the first floor from the ground floor. And I remember that this daughter of mine, one day, she is crawling over the staircase. And I was very concerned, because if she falls down, something wrong would happen. So I chased her, and ultimately she fell, but she fell onto my arm. But then we kept a vigil on her. And then I realized that she understands that I am noticing her. Not only that, she understood when I'm not noticing her. And when I'm not noticing her, she would somehow silently go and again walk over the stairs. I don't know how many of you, and in particularly, if you really want to understand human cognition, you must be very careful in your observation how children grow, how their cognitive abilities grow. It is very, very important for us to understand this. Otherwise, we are missing something in our life. So I realized that this little girl, at some point of time, had a self power. She has enough creativity, enough power, enough ability to walk over the staircase. And she wanted an opportunity, an opportunity to establish that she has that ability, right? This self-awareness we don't have in machine. No machine has this. We cannot tell, even a very sophisticated robot that can dance to the tune of a music. You play a music and robot can dance. But this robot doesn't know literally anything about music or about the joy that a human being derives. um, this robot doesn't have that ability. So the machines that we are making are dull machines. And I think there is some big noise there. Okay. So children, when they grow up, not only they become self-aware, they also become aware of the world around themselves. And then the next stage of development is imitation. They learn based on imitation. And I'll explain you the funny way we do imitation learning. Okay, and that is not at all human. There is no human cognition, human-like cognition involved. For example, a teacher has to teach a robot how to dance, and um, how to dance, and Rishi Prabhu, how long I can continue? Because based on that, I can skip some of these uh, slides. How much time I have? 5 minutes? Okay. Oh, so I have very little time. So I will skip this. Um, I'll skip all this. So now let us talk about the hard problem. Okay. Alice lives in your house. A robot lives in your house. Hears your family members, picks up vocabulary slowly and steadily, starts speaking in a broken language, and becomes expert in your language. And one day it learns to write poetry and finally receives a Nobel Prize in literature. If we can exhibit using a machine, then we can probably say that we have understood the human cognition. This human cognition, why I'm giving emphasis, because this is of a different kind of energy than the kind of energy that current science is studying. Or current science is thinking that is the source of everything that existing. But I'm saying human cognitive energy is something even more fundamental than the energy that we discussed today. So I'm going to go a little bit. This I am skipping. Let me talk to, because the topic is about Bhagavat Sankhya, and I have not even started about Bhagavat Sankhya. So let me tell about Bhagavat Sankhya a little bit, and because this is very important part of this talk I have kept a little late. I thought that probably I should explain to you what is human cognition, what is the science is doing in terms of identifying the primordial nature of the energy and so forth. Now, let me talk about in Bhagavad Gita 7.4. So let me explain to you the world of experience. There are two aspects to it. One is phenomena, the other is noumena. Phenomena is the experience, like in Kantian term, phenomenon is a thing as it appears to and is constructed by the mind, as distinguished from the noumena, a thing in itself. That means the world is something that we don't know, but we have experience of that world. So experience of the world is the phenomena. And the world, what it is, we don't know, that is noumena. So whether it is a theologist or a scientist, we are all trying to reach the same source that gives us different experiences. But underlying those experiences, what is truth? What is the main thing? So if you look at, there are different level of noumena has been explained in Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna as he described to Arjuna. In 7.4, Lord Krishna told 8 categories of elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. This is the first level of noumena. Underlying any experience, these 8 things, if I use, probably I can explain. Okay. What is earth? Earth is that which is the space of smell. Water is that element which is the space for taste. Fire is another element that is the space for form. Air is another kind of element that is the space for touch. Ether is a very subtle element, and that is the space of sound. Again, when I say sound, sound has very gross form in terms of Vaikhari, and then you go to subtle Madhyama and then Pashyanti, very subtle levels of sound by using which our scientists, earlier ancient scientists of India, could manipulate the energy and build a nuclear weapon. And then mind is again another space, a very subtle space that carries emotion, free will, and so forth. And intelligence, is again even subtler than mind, and false is even further subtler. That gives me, or that has identity or space of identity. But Lord Krishna is explaining, still we cannot explain our experiential world using only these 8 elements. We need to bring up the 9th element, and that 9th element is the Atman, the self. And this is not there within the purview of the current science. And then Krishna is talking that still we cannot explain everything using these 9 elements. We have to add to that the 10th element, and that is the absolute truth. And in fact, this absolute truth contains all these elements within it. So this is how Bhagavat Sankhya, in a very, very small, nutshell way, presented in Bhagavad Gita, and that has been elaborated in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam by Lord Kapila in a great detail. He explained that science to his own mother, Devahuti. So, as I explained to you, what is earth, water, air, fire, ether?
Ravi, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Uh-huh.
You can go 5 more minutes, not just I told you 5, you can go 10. So there's like another 5 minutes you can go.
Okay. Thank you giving me some more time. I was rushing actually. So if you look at this Bhagavad Sankhya, it's very interesting here. Sound is subtlemost. When in a gross, there is a gross material energy, there is subtle material energy, and then beyond subtle material energy, we have subtle spiritual energy. So this is how the ladder works. And if you look at, because within empiric science, probably we can study, first let us try to study the gross material energy. And if you look at here, the sound is the subtlest form in the gross material energy. And from sound comes ether. From ether, uh, somebody said, I don't know, some disturbance is there. Okay, so please don't disturb, because that so there is a process of evolution, just like science is trying to understand from where the primordial energy came, right? Similarly, here you can see that different energies, all are this spatio-temporal energy, whether it's touch, air, form, fire, taste, water, smell, earth. The origin is very subtle form of sound energy. And this is something very, very interesting for us to note. And if you look at Bhagavat Samkhya, you see that any information um, is carried by a space, and that space must have a resting place. Like, for example, earth rests on water. Is counterintuitive, isn't it? Water rests on fire. Fire rests on air. Air rests on sky. Sky rests on sound. Sound rests on false ego. False ego rests on Maya or Prakriti. Prakriti rests on Brahman. And Brahman rests as Paramatma or Krishna. And Krishna rests on himself. That is how the entire Bhagavat Sakya has been presented. This is a little pictorial form of that. I have taken from BI book on Gaudiya Vaishnava Vedanta. This picture I have taken. But given that, let me tell you, I will skip this, maybe here. You see, in Bhagavad Gita, in 15.16, when we talk about human cognition, it has been identified there are two personalities involved with human cognition. One is Akshara, the other is Kshara. Kshara is the external dress, and Akshara is Atman. And it says Kshara, that which is destructible, is this external body. That means this material body has a semantic personality, and that appears to be so real, we take that to be very real. But this is actually temporary. And whereas the real, that is Atman, which is, we have not searched for it. We don't ask question how to reach that object. And so in Vedanta, it is very clear that our material personality, consisting of its free will, emotion, intellectual pursuits, and creative potency, are manifestation of material energy. However, this material energy is more fundamental than the energy being talked about in empiric science. So what I'm trying to tell, this Kshara personality is a higher level of energy than the energy that we are investigating within empiric science. And I'll quote a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 23rd chapter, 20th verse, where it is written, here and there in that palace where multitudes of live swans and pigeons, as well as artificial swans and pigeons, so lifelike that the real swans rose above them again and again, thinking them like birds, thinking them live birds like themselves. Thus the palace vibrated with sounds of these birds. I don't know how many of you understood this. The context. Context is a great sage, Kardama, has manifested by his mystic potency an aerial mansion In that mansion, there are many lakes and ponds. And in one such pond, there were artificial swans, artificial pigeons, as well as real swans and real pigeons. But these artificial swans and pigeons are so alike that even the live swans and live pigeons could not make a distinction between what is live and what is artificial. So from here, we can get an idea that, or we can, Vedantic theology gives us an inspiration. Why must we build a human-like robot? Because it will help us to understand gross sensory level perception, its connection to emotional and intellectual construct. It may lead to environmental friendly science and technology. Just like we have now physical laws, which are very syntactic. Can we talk about semantic laws? I will give you why semantic is so important. You say we have we run a school in Vrindavan, which is called Bhaktivedanta Gurukul, an international school. When we took this land to establish this campus, this is a 100-acre campus, and to get a contiguous campus is not very easy. So wherever we got, we took it, but later we realized this campus is alkaline, salty, and not suitable for farming. We called for district agriculture officer, soil conservationist, and they could not help us in helping us. Later, I sent one of my staff to Subhas Palekar, who learnt the science of Jivamrita. This Jivamrita is made from cow urine, cow dung, and some jaggery powder and besan powder or chana powder, and then fermentation of that, by which the microbes that are living in the cow dung can be cultured in millions and billions, and then they are sprinkled over the land. And now you'll be amazed that this so-called barren and sterile land is providing us enough wheat, enough rice, enough mustard seed, lentils, sabji, vegetables, everything we are getting. And they are very fresh, very nutritionally sumptuous. Now the point here is, I did an experiment here. In my house at IIT Kanpur, I told one of my students to make two different plots. In one plot, we didn't add any Jivamrita, and another plot we added Jivamrita. And we planted the corns, corns, all of you know that, Makkah. And we saw wherever we added Jivamrita, soil is same, we added Jivamrita, then we saw that that particular part of the land, the corn trees grew very fast, and here they grew very slow. So we did a test. We have Professor Vinod Tare, he has a very high quality testing facility. And I wanted to know whether adding Jivamrita is actually changing the composition of the soil. Because the modern philosophy is soil must have this percentage of phosphorus, this percentage of calcium, like that, to be it fertile, right? That is the idea of modern science. Whereas I wanted to see. So we had already tested before we applied the Jivamrita. What is this soil composition? We noted down. And after we added the Jivamrita, again we did this soil sample. And we saw soil composition is unchanged. But in one case, the soil is giving us wonderful tree and wonderful yield. The other case, the soil is not giving wonderful yield. Composition is same. So this is where I would request all of you who are hearing this lecture that there is a fundamental change necessary in science to understand that, for example, why it is important, because in Bhagavad Gita it is said that Sarvagata Sthanur, That means living entities can live anywhere. So what happened here where we added Jivamrita? There the soil became livable. That means these microbes penetrated that land and created their house there. They started eating uh, um, the 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 soil there and made it more porous and so forth. But soil composition didn't change. So what is the science of soil? So when we say science of soil in terms of phosphorus or sodium or calcium, then we are going back to our original idea of scientific uh, exploration of our primitive primordial energy, which is simply inert energy. But here there is another kind of energy that is also living in the soil, and that is making soil more beautiful, something that we have to think about. So the more important point I want to make in this is my last slide and then my concluding slide. The subtlety is the way of searching the truth. Empirical science, one of the great contributions of empirical science is that from gross they could go to the subtle. But then this is the way of our ancient scientists of India. If you look at nuclear weapon used in Mahabharata, is based on manipulation of material energy using subtle sound. I explained to you in Bhagavat Samkhya, this subtle sound is the origin of all other elements that is there within this universe, right? So, although this subtle material science is not spiritual, but it has a direct relationship with the spiritual method, which is still subtler. So that is why this debate debate and engagement between science and theology would bring us to a point where we can make our lifestyle holistic, our understanding about the world around us holistic, and we can actually embark upon a very wonderful world. So conclusion is science and theology, they must have a discussion among themselves. And that would bring us new idea of green energy, new idea of subtle sound. That will also bring us holistic healthcare, education, agroscience I talked about. And Bhagavat Sankhya will be the guiding principle. And based on that, ISS and we are working with an Institute of Science and Spirituality to bring up a university, Brindaranyam University, for this. So I hope my talk had some has thrown some light into. First, I talked about that how the worldview changes when we bring in new information, and Vedantic theology talks about an anti-material energy. And if we understand that energy, we don't have to understand that energy vis-a-vis it's in its pure form, but its energy, which I talked about, kshara, the kshara part of that energy would help us to build a very, very synergetic, a peaceful and prosperous society around us. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor Behera. That was a wonderful session. We just have the time for just one question. We just had one question that has come in. There are several questions that have been posted, but we had time to choose one. We just present it to you one sec. Praveen, you've sent it to me. I can't see it on my chat. Or you could just
Now participants can ask question by typing in chat box. We'll read it to the speaker.
Yeah, but we have time for one question, so it was
Okay, we
already
can take
identified.
one question.
It was already identified and sent. I'm just trying to trace it. One second. Maybe you could just unmute Parveen and you could just read it out.
Okay, yeah, so I'll read the question.
Yeah.
The first question by Dr. Ritu Singh, and she's asking, are feelings transmitted as waves of energy?
Okay. Again, actually, I skipped many of my slides because I realized I don't have time to, and in fact, this particular point was there in my slide to explain to you that there is a two different categories of energy. See, many of you, because we are practicing Gaudiya Vaishnavas, so we are so familiar with this. We understand it the moment we talk about it. You see that one is the gross material energy. But beyond gross material energy, the energy that I as an individual person is even subtler than this gross material energy. Plus, beyond this I as an individual person, right? The way you identify yourself, the way I identify myself, beyond that personality, there is another personality, which is we call Akshara. But this particular energy, which in a scientific term, I talk about, this is semantic energy. This is not syntactic energy, energy that has no sense, no quality. The current understanding of the energy is a simple inert. But the energy that I am dealing with, it is not inert. It has feeling, it has emotion, it has, it understands things, it is self-aware. So this energy we have not understood. And because why we have not understood? Because we have not invested. You have to recognize, every country invests, 4% of their GDP in science and technology, right? So if you look at the total, GDP of the entire world is around 100 trillion. And I don't think, it will be maximum 100 trillion. So 4% is almost like 4 trillion. So $4 trillion we are investing in understanding this energy, whereas we don't even invest a single pie to understand the energy that matters to us. And that is a big gap, and that has created inherent imbalance between we human, because we are human, we are as a living entity. The living body is different from the non-living body. We have to recognize this first. The living body has a living energy or is associated with a different kind of energy, and that energy is absolutely of different kind. And I have tried to bring out this particular energy in terms of universal semantic space, how this universal semantic space emerges through its association with its environment. So that's a different kind of study. And I think Vedanta theology, if people pursue, they can bring out this energy, understanding of this. This energy is still material energy, but this can be studied. this can be studied. And in ancient time, this was really studied very with proper anchorage from kings and royal personalities.
Okay, so because we are running very short of time, so we'll not be able to take more questions. And you can put your question in the chat window, and we'll later on answer all of your questions. So we can quickly go to the next lecture by Professor Gopal Gupta.
Thank you very much, Sir Laxmidhar Behera, for your enlightening, enlivening, inspirational presentation. It was even for a lay person with very little exposure to science or spirituality, there were so many points that were drawing in from the best of both worlds, as they say. Thank you very much. And